Hello, sports fans, and welcome to Let Me Speak, the show that shares sports' biggest headlines explained, uninterrupted, and maybe a little audacious. I'm Joe Braverman, and today's topics we'll be discussing are
approaching the end of the second round, the NBA playoff team with the best chance to reach the finals. Plus, a deep dive into each series from the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And can the LA Angels continue their dominance in the MLB? It's episode 72 of Let Me Speak, and it starts right now. What is up, everybody, here on Thursday, May 12th, 2022, the 72nd edition of Let Me Speak. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in wherever you are getting this podcast. It is an absolute gorgeous day here in Swampscott, Massachusetts. It's going to reach 70 and then eventually 80. I mean, just something about the warm weather always puts me in a really good mood. And I definitely need it after last night, which we will get into a little bit, because if you're from the city of Boston or you're a Boston fan, you know exactly what happened the previous night and why you might be upset. So as I said, we'll get into it later, but there's so much going on that we just got to get right into it. And obviously the NBA playoffs are still going on and continue to be the big headline out there. And we start because the conference semis are going to end by this weekend. Some series could end tonight, but by next week, by the time we do our next episode, we will know the final four teams contending for the NBA championship. And so just going series by series, as we always do, we start with the 1-4 in the East, the Heat and the Sixers. Surprisingly, it got competitive again. I was way off in thinking that this could be a sweep, just because I didn't really know about the injury status of Joel Embiid. I didn't know if he was going to be back or if he wasn't going to be back, how healthy he was going to be. But all of a sudden, 2 games in Philly and all of a sudden, bam, 2-2. But then a few nights ago, Miami once again showed why it's been an absolute dominant series by the Heat early on. And really, I want to zone in on that game 5 because honestly, the story is around, the effort. What the heck was the effort from Philly in game 5? I mean, they just looked completely uninvested. They were down by as much as 37 at one point in a game 5 playoff game that was tied at 2-2. That doesn't make any sense. They only shot 36.5% from the field, 28% from 3. And not only that, take the numbers and the statistics and the analytics out of it, but just watch on the court when you watch those highlights. I mean, look at James Harden, how uninvolved he is and standing around. You see him drive to the basket, he gets stolen, and what does he do for the next 3 seconds? He just puts his hands up and is just like, damn it. And he's just standing around. It doesn't make any sense. And then on the defensive end, he's just letting guys shoot threes. He's complaining about calls and turnovers. I mean, I'm not putting it all on James Harden because everyone else was completely uninvested. It just looked like the offense was not running at all. Joel Embiid wasn't as effective as he normally is. And honestly, he's not even the dominating force when he came back from injury. So, it's still there, not just with the orbital fracture wearing the mask, but the concussion, the torn ligament in his thumb. I mean, the last 3 games consecutively, he's got 18 points, 11 rebounds, 24 points, 11 rebounds, and 17 points, 5 rebounds. So ultimately, someone else for Philly has to have a good game because Joel Embiid is not the MVP candidate that he was in the regular season. So for Philly to have any kind of chance in this, someone else has to put up numbers. And we saw that in game 4 when Harden had one good game. I think he put up 31 points or something like that, reminiscing to his Houston days. But really, that's all you can get from Harden nowadays. You get one good game out of him, but he can't do any more than that. I mean, game 5, he had 14 points on 5 of 13 shooting, including 2 of 6 from 3, 6 rebounds and 4 assists. Now, it's crazy, but that's just what he's been averaging since his time in Philly. So, you have to rely on other guys like Tyrese Maxey. Like, you're going to trust a second-year guy to put up monster numbers to replace Joel Embiid. You're going to trust Tobias Harris, who's much better as a third or fourth scoring option than a number 1 or a number 2 scoring option. Danny Green, who's pretty much over the hill, I would say. I mean, honestly, the way I see this series is that whichever team gets consistent scoring from their role players is going to win this series. And we've seen it, how well the role players play at home when you look at the series shifting from Miami to Philadelphia. But this is more on the Heat side of things, because I ultimately believe that the Heat are going to come out of this series. They could do it tonight when they play game 6, or they could do it Saturday when game 7 happens back at home. But they are going to get out of this. And why? Because I just see them dominating the paint. Outside of Kyle Lowry, there's still tons of weapons, which I continue to say week after week after week for this Heat team. But specifically, when you look at what they did in the paint, they outscored them in game 5, 56-36 in the paint. They out-rebounded them 46-36, and they scored 23 points off 16 Philadelphia turnovers. So this is all without their big prize in the free agent market, Kyle Lowry. That means Jimmy Butler, Max Strus, I think, had 19 points in the game, and then you still get double digits off the bench from Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo. But I look more at the centers, the bigs that the Heat have. I look at Bam Adebayo, Dwayne Dedmon, PJ Tucker, just to name a few guys. I think on Philadelphia's side of things, they're limited now. You've got a limited Joel Embiid, who's not really working in the post as much as he has in the past, because he's got injuries. You've got kind of an old and washed up DeAndre Jordan, who's not the same guy that he used to be. And then you got no other size beside that. I think they were doing, Doc Rivers was doing Reed. I forget his first name. I think it's Paul Reed or something like that. He was playing their small ball center, but he's only 6'9", and he doesn't really play any bigger than that. So I look at those bigs for the Heat versus the 76ers bigs, and I see a huge advantage on Miami's side of things. So I think by the time we get to the conference finals, Miami will be one of those teams. And I keep saying it over and over and over, every time we got to talk about the Heat, how continuously they get overlooked. And even in this, in the second round, people want to talk more about how competitive the Celtics and Bucks are, or what Philadelphia is not doing. Let's talk about the Heat and how well they are as a team. Obviously, if it was the Celtics who came out over the Bucks, I'm not rooting for the Heat, but I just want more people to pay attention to how well Miami is playing. And this is no fluke. It's no fluke that the Heat are doing well. They had one bad year last year, but they've got all the right pieces to make a run possibly for the 2022 championship. But speaking of Celtics and Bucks, I think overall it has been the most compelling series so far in the NBA playoffs. I take out anything in the West, anything else in the East. These two, it's where it's at. You could put these two in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's how stacked this is. And now heading into game 6 tomorrow night, Friday night, with the Bucks possibly closing it out at home 3-2. And we'll get deep into the Celtics side of things when we get into Let's Get Local. But for this segment, I want to talk about Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee had a big fourth quarter comeback in game 5. They were down by as much as 14. They got a couple of lucky bounces in the last few possessions, with Giannis missing the free throw, Bobby Portis, right place, right time. And then Drew Holiday just playing well defensively, I thought did really well. But overall for the game, I thought the Celtics were the better team overall in that game. And it took one good quarter from the Bucks. They made their shots when they need to, especially from 3. They shot the 3 much better than they have all series long. They were 13 of 29, 45% from 3. You look at what Giannis did He finally found a way around Al Horford. Just looking at the game, I watched it from start to finish. That matchup, I think Giannis maybe found a little something that can get him around Al Horford, because everyone's talking about, oh, Horford has been playing great defensively on Giannis, and he has, but you can't hold him down for so much longer. I mean, this is a guy who put up 40 points in a do or die game 5, 16 and 27 for the field, 11 rebounds, but 7 turnovers. So it's really 50-50 when you look at the matchup between Antetokounmpo and Al Horford. Giannis has the step on the drive. You know, when he's driving to the basket, he has the step. It's when he's going from side to side. Horford's got some really good active hands that we've seen a bunch of strips from the ball. But we've seen whenever Giannis gets that step on Horford, he's going right to the basket. And without Robert Williams for the Celtics in the lineup, there's no one to really challenge him at the rim. We've seen him slowly get better against Grant Williams. And as I said, he's got the quickness around Horford. So I think Giannis, it's still something to watch for, because he did have 7 turnovers in the game. But I think for when it came down to it the most, you know, he made that huge 3 from the top of the key that rattled in the fourth quarter. And then I just think Giannis is too hard to stop for a long period of time. It's very hard. The Celtics are going to have to do a better job defensively, but I don't really look at Giannis as winning that game for Milwaukee. I look at Jrue Holiday, as I mentioned. I give him credit for a clutch performance in game 5. I mean, 24 points he put on the board, including, I think he scored 9 in the first quarter. He also put in 8 rebounds and 8 assists, but everyone's looking at those 3 huge defensive stops that he had. You know, when the clock was running down, he blocks Marcus Smart. And then at the same time, he throws the ball off Smart to keep it Milwaukee ball. And then as the Celtics were driving, he takes the ball away from Smart again to seal the game and win it by 3. I give full credit to Jrue Holiday for playing as well as he did in game 5. But if I'm on the Boston side of things, I look at this game as this was a must win that was there for the taking. You had it like in your sights. And you could argue that Boston has been the better and more consistent team throughout the series. You know, you take away game 1 when they were totally outmatched. Game 3, they were half a second away if Horford had some more time to tip it in. You look at this game, game 5, they were up 14. And if they just played better offensively, they could have won the game and not let Milwaukee back into things. So you could argue that. And I think Boston, if they lose this series and they lose one of the next 2 games, they're going to kick themselves for this game 5, because it was there for the taking. It was there in reach. I still would favor the Celtics to come out of this series just because, you know, they have not played to their highest potential and they've given a lot of games away. You know, you look at the games they've lost, they've been ultra competitive. They've made comebacks. They've had big leads. You know, if they just put it all together for a good 44 minutes and play much better in the fourth quarter, then this is a team I think can get out of it. But whoever comes out of this series, I think is going to go to the NBA Finals. And I would even favor them in the NBA Finals, seeing how the Western Conference has played. So I think right now my favorites would be either the Celtics or the Bucks, whoever comes out of this series, to not only represent the East, but possibly win it all. But speaking of the West, let's get to their series and talk about the 1-4 between Phoenix and Dallas. Another game and another series that could be clinched tonight before the episode even comes out. The Suns now up 3-2 on the Mavs. Just looking at the series, I think it's more about the Suns or others beating themselves in the games in Dallas in games 3 and 4. And when I say others, I'm talking about the officials. I mean, how ridiculous were those officials in game 4 when CP3 fouled out? He had more fouls than points. And I would say about 3 or 4 of those calls were absolutely ridiculous, which, by the way, just side note, the officials have been horrible in this series. Absolutely horrible. They're slowing down the pace of the game with a bunch of reviews. In that game 3, Marcus Smart should have had a foul, 3 shots instead of 2. And then obviously The game 4 where Chris Paul fouled out. They've really got to get their head screwed on right. But just back to the play on the court for Phoenix. I didn't really see anyone take over the game in Dallas like we saw in game 5. I didn't see Devin Booker or DeAndre Ayton kind of assert themselves. And then obviously Chris Paul didn't get the chance because he fouled out. But they did right the ship when the series went back to Phoenix. Booker put in 28 points in that game 5. And then just again, back to Paul, he just finds so many different ways to impact the game. He is ultimately the point god. He only had 7 points, but 10 assists. And really all of it just came in the second half. I mean, the Suns outscored Dallas 61-34, especially in the third quarter. They outscored them 33-14. And then they've just been dominating the paint. Like I said last week, they've been dominating all series long. Like in game 5, they outscored them 44-24. And what's interesting in my eyes about the Suns team is how Monty Williams is using his backups, specifically the backup centers. You've got 2 different centers for 2 different roles, Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee. If Phoenix is looking for any kind of scoring or any kind of rebounding, you're going to Biyombo, because we've seen how well he's played against all the Dallas centers like Dwight Powell or Maxi Kleber or Davis Bertans. We've seen how well he does. For defense, if you need stops, you go to JaVale McGee, a guy who's 7'1" and is a rim protector. That's just the different roles that Monty Williams has had. He didn't really go to McGee as much in game 5. He went more to Biyombo. And I think for Monty Williams, he's just playing the hot hand. I mean, he is the coach of the year. He already got that award. So, I trust Monty Williams to make the right decisions. And I think ultimately Phoenix is going to come out of this series. But if the Mavericks want to come out of this series, the scoring has got to spread out other than Luka Doncic. Okay, we know what Luka can do. You look at those both home games, you had at least 5 guys scoring in double figures in both of those home games. But you look at game 5, Luka had 28, Jalen Brunson had 21, Davis Bertans had 10. No one else was in the double digits. So, I look at a guy like Reggie Bullock or Dorian Finney-Smith, who are catch and shoot players from 3. They'll probably shoot better at home, compared to on the road, just because that's what role players do. And that's kind of what I'm seeing from game 6. If those guys shoot as well, and we just see more consistent scoring throughout the Dallas lineup, then the Mavericks can have a chance. But ultimately, I do like Phoenix to come out of this one. And I even think they can take the win tonight. I think they can end it tonight. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, though, nonetheless. And then the final series, obviously, is Warriors-Grizzlies. Obviously, another big development. It started with, some heated moments with Dillon Brooks, the flagrant foul on Gary Payton. Now Ja Morant is going to be doubtful for the rest of the playoffs. He's definitely out of this series against Golden State. But that didn't matter to the Grizzlies last night in game 5. Total blowout victory by Memphis on their home court. They led by 55 at one point. 55 against the team that has Steph Curry, the best shooter in the world, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, weapons galore for the Golden State Warriors. And they beat them by 37, but led by 55 at one point. 55. And it's just shocking looking at the numbers, how well Memphis has done without Morant on the court. I think I saw the numbers. He was 21-6. They were 21-6 without an MVP candidate and maybe one of the best young players in the league in Ja Morant. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous what the Grizzlies have done. I mean, just reading off the numbers, they shot 47.5% from the field. They shot 18 of 41 from 3. 18-4 the offensive rebounds, 29 points off 22 Golden State turnovers, and they just dominated the paint 50-36. Now, I mean, you could go back to game 4 as well, simply for the fact that Memphis had it. This could be 3-2 Memphis, but they just couldn't come up with the timely baskets. And that's sort of what I see when it gets like to close games, because it's not going to be a 55-point lead or a 30-point blowout. at one point for the rest of the series. You know that the Warriors are going to respond. We know that for a fact because the offense was nowhere near where they usually are. Curry had 14 points. Klay Thompson had 19 points. Jordan Poole shot 1 of 6 from the field. Draymond Green had 5 turnovers. So that's ultimately, I see Golden State cleaning it up. I think they can bounce back and they can win this game. Because, I mean, you just limit those turnovers, 22 Golden State turnovers, and they were just trying to do too much, I think. The one advantage I do see Memphis having is in the paint, similar to the Heat and the Sixers. I would trust the size of Memphis with Steven Adams, Jaren Jackson Jr., some of those guys over guys like Kevon Looney or Draymond Green, who is the death lineup center. I trust Memphis on that side of things. I think I'm going to favor Golden State still, just as I see that offense turning it around. You know, Steph Curry isn't going to have a poor shooting stretch for, as many as 3 games. Klay Thompson will shoot better. And Draymond Green, he's smart enough to look at himself in the mirror and realize I created most of those turnovers, so I got to turn things around. So I'm still going to favor Golden State. By the time next week rolls around, my predictions are that the Heat will play the Celtics and the Suns will play the Warriors. That's what I think. But it has been so exciting this NBA postseason that all predictions and expectations can be thrown out the window and we can just enjoy what has been an incredible NBA postseason. NBA, the NHL is also in the midst of their playoff run. The race to the Stanley Cup is going to get tighter and tighter as the second round is almost here. We got a couple of game 6s tonight. We had a couple game 5s last night. But again, like the NBA, we will know the next series of matchups by the time we get to a new episode next week. And so far, we have only had one series come to an end. And that was an easy sweep from the Colorado Avalanche over the Nashville Predators. And I'm not going to take too much time on it because I thought, right from the jump that the Avalanche were not going to have a problem with the Preds. And, they outscored them 21-9 in the series. The 4 games that Colorado won, 7-2, 2-1 in overtime, 7-3, and 5-3. And really, in that series, I just look at the special teams. The Avalanche were just so dominant on the power play, 44% success rate. Avalanche, I would say they're in the clear now because they got the sweep. Every other series is going at least 6. This is beneficiary to Colorado to get so much rest before their next series. But let's talk about the series that are still going on. We start obviously with the 1-4 between the Panthers and the Capitals. That's been a lot closer than I expected between these two. And now after last night, Florida up 3-2 on the Caps after 5 unanswered goals starting after that first period. I think the second period was huge for the Panthers. And I think these two teams are very evenly matched. I think Washington is a good postseason team, maybe not a regular season team, but they have postseason success. They have a lot of experience. But for Florida, the difference I see, though, is in the goaltending situation. I would trust Sergei Bobrovsky more than Ilya Samsonov, just because, again, you go to experience. I know, at least from personal standpoint, watching Bobrovsky, how successful he's been in his NHL career. So I think that's what it really comes down to. And I ultimately see Florida coming out of this series. I'm still going to ride with that. I know a lot of people want to ride the Caps because of all the experience they have with Alex Ovechkin, TJ Brody, those guys. I like Florida. I like Florida coming out of this series just because they're so evenly matched, but they've got the home ice. And, I think more importantly in this postseason, home ice means a lot. But that's kind of the East series that's been a little under the radar. Everyone's looking more at the Penguins and the Rangers. I know me in particular, it's one of the more series I'm paying the close attention to. I thought it was going to be a close series after that triple overtime game in game one, but it's turned into a Penguins blowout, although New York did survive last night to make it 3-2 and get their home ice back. I think you can see effects from that game one triple overtime. Obviously, the effects is that the third string goalie for Pittsburgh, who is the hero, Domingue, is still in net as compared to Casey DeSmith, who's the second stringer. But the effects that you're seeing is with Igor Shesterkin. I mean, Shesterkin is not the same goalie that we saw in the regular season. This was a guy who very late last night, early today, was named an MVP finalist. An MVP finalist is a goalie. And when you see his numbers in the postseason as compared to the regular season, you're thinking, what the heck happened to this guy? This is a guy in the regular season who was tops in the NHL in goals against average at just over 2 goals a game and had a .935 save percentage, which both were best in the NHL for goaltenders. And he had a 36-13 record in 53 regular season games. Now in the postseason, in these first 5 games, his goals against average is .399, 3.99, and his save percentage is .905. I have no idea what has caused this turnaround other than the simple fact of he played all minutes. He didn't sit for a second in that triple overtime win. He played the full, just trying to do the math real quick. I think it was like over 90 minutes or something like that. And he made 79 saves. So I think for Shesterkin, it's going to be all about, can New York score with Pittsburgh? I think that's going to be the difference maker, because Shesterkin's not going to be the same guy. He's not going to be the same guy. I mean, he got pulled, I think, 2 or 3 times already in this series. I think the number was in his last 6 periods, he's given up 13 goals. Let me say that again. 13 goals given up in the last 6 periods. Not 6 games, 6 periods. So this is something that obviously the Rangers have to look and realize that he's going to be on a very short leash for the rest of the series, if they can survive. If Pittsburgh goes up 2-0, I should say, I say you yank it right then and there, or even 1-0 to a point. That's what I see on Pittsburgh's side of things. The other development is that Sidney Crosby is hurt. Now he's left the game. He left the game last night. People are describing it as an upper body injury. That offense takes a huge hit. So I think this is the Rangers' prime opportunity, if Crosby can't play, to get out there and steal the series. That's what I think it's got to be. It's got to be the Rangers capitalizing on this. But I think the way Shesterkin is playing, I'd favor Pittsburgh. I'd favor the Penguins more to close this out. Because, I mean, come on. 3-1 series lead. I know a lot of people have blown it. I will not credit the Rangers if they do lose this game, or if they lose this series. I will say that they blew it. I will just say they blew it right then and there. But the other compelling series in the East, we got the Leafs and the Lightning. Now, scoring has been a premium in that series. Now with the Leafs up 3-2, and you'd say, 3-2, Toronto should win this series. But look at their postseason history. Again, this is a team that hasn't won a series since 2004. They blew a 3-1 lead to the Canadiens last year, and the Canadiens just earned the first pick in next year's NHL draft, meaning they were the worst team in the league. But the headline I see out of this series has been penalties. Penalties has been the headliner. I mean, these teams among playoff teams are 1 and 2 in penalty minutes. Toronto's got 122. Tampa Bay's got 103. And so I don't really, not necessarily who has more power play goals. I see whoever has more power play chances are usually going to win this game. And I think win the series. I know Toronto has a lot of penalty minutes right now, but a lot of that was attributed to game one, how heated that was, including the the 10-minute major. But I just see whoever has more chances, because even if you don't score on the power play, you're still establishing a lot of zone time on the offense. So you've got the other team on their heels. So as much as I love Tampa Bay just for their championship experience, and how well they are being the two-time defending champs, I think the Leafs somehow, some way, they're going to find a way to win this series. I think more so because Game 7 will be on their home ice, and we know how rowdy Canadian fans are up there, up north. For any of their playoff teams, I think this is the year Toronto does it. And if I'm wrong, then Toronto, I don't think are going to win another series or even the Stanley Cup for a very long time if they once again blow another 3-2 series lead. But the final series in the Eastern Conference are the Hurricanes and the Bruins. And this is similar to Toronto and Tampa Bay. Power plays are a huge factor, but it's been a home team dominant kind of series. You had Carolina dominate the first 2 games on their home ice. Then Boston came out and dominated the next 2 games on their ice. Carolina went back to Game 5. They dominated 5-1. Now you've got Game 6 tonight on the Garden ice. I don't know what to say other than I think if the series goes the exact same way it was, Carolina should win this series. But I did say last week that the Bruins just looked kind of outmatched. I mean, this was a total 360, when the series shifted to Boston, and then it did another 360 once it went back to Carolina. But again, special teams are setting the tempo. And more so, I look at Carolina's side of things and then just see that they're getting more high percentage shots. When you look at the numbers, the Bruins have taken 14 more shots than the Hurricanes, but their shot percentage is 7.9. Carolina's is 12.7. So Carolina are getting better shots. It's not necessarily that they're just getting shots. They're getting better shots. They're getting them off of a bunch of passes. I think this is a really good passing team. They're attacking the net. They're capitalizing off the Bruins turnovers extremely well. And then they've got a great backup in Antti Raanta, who's been performing well, while Freddie Anderson, who's been the star goaltender for the Hurricanes for a couple of years now, has been sitting on the sidelines due to injury. So I ultimately think that Carolina is going to come out of this series. I wouldn't put it past anyone if the Bruins won this series because they have more of the championship experience. When you look at their roster, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, they have more playoff experience as compared to this Carolina team. So I think it is a flip of the coin, but my side of the coin would tell me that the Hurricanes will win the series just because the way the series is going on home ice. If Bruins win Game 6, Hurricanes win Game 7. That's all it is. There's no simple logic other than the fact that the home team just plays better. That's really all I can give you. I'm not an expert in the NHL, but that's all I can tell you is that, in that series, the home team will win, every single game. So give me the Hurricanes on that one. Shifting over, though, to the Western Conference, the Flames and the Stars, they continue to go back and forth. It's been a really low-scoring series now with Calgary up 3-2 after last night's 3-1 win. I think the difference in that series is the Flames. The Flames have some great defensive pairs out there, and just everyone they're putting on the ice on the defensive category. I mean, no one was a negative plus-minus except for Noah Hanifin, who was a -1 in Game 5. So I think that's the big difference for Calgary's side of things. I like Dallas's fight. I wouldn't be surprised if this does go 7 games, but I just look at the response and the late game play from Calgary. And I like the Flames to come out of it. I hate to do it against the Dallas Stars, but I like Calgary to come out of this one just because, after Game 5, they got all 3 goals in the third period when they were down 2-1. I think Calgary just has the momentum. I think they have the momentum after that game, especially the way they were able to come back all in one period. But between the Blues and the Wild, though, is a completely different story. The Blues are now 1 win away from knocking out the Wild. And the way I see St. Louis, the way they've been playing, they've been overcoming their slow starts. And that's what hurt them early on in the series. Now, since the series have shifted home, they're playing much, much better. So far in the first period of the series, they've been outscored 8-4. When you look at the second and the third periods, since game 3, they have outscored Minnesota 9-4 in both the second and the third periods in game 3. I mean, look at game 5. Vladimir Tarasenko got his hat trick all in the third period. You know, I would favor St. Louis in this one just because it's all about keeping Minnesota close. And we saw when it was game 2. I mean, obviously they had the shutout win in game 1, I should say, 4-0. But when you look at game 2 and game 3, which they lost, they let it get away from them early on. You know, since then, they've been keeping it close. It's been, 2-1 or 1-1 or scoreless. It's been those kind of close games. And that's the difference for St. Louis, is just keeping it within striking distance. And I think that's why I'd favor the Blues to come out of this series over the Minnesota Wild. But then the final series of the playoffs is the Kings and the Oilers. I'm very surprised to see LA up 3-2 on Edmonton right now. I mean, when you look at the series, the Oilers have been in every game except for that 4-0 shutout loss they had in game 4. But I think the difference is the Kings' strategy of just wearing them out. You look at the numbers, LA has taken 200 shots so far. That's second in the postseason. And why are they doing that? Because they're wearing out the Edmonton goaltender, 40-year-old Mike Smith. He has been struggling recently in these last 2 games. He's given up 9 goals in these last 2 games. You do the math, in those first 3 games, it was a total of 6. So I think what LA, they do have the advantage, I think, in the neutral zone, just watching them play, and then just wearing out Mike Smith so they can really take advantage of him in the third period, I think, is the big difference. And that's why I think that's why I think LA surprisingly can come out on top of this. I think the Oilers have a good offense, and I know they've been in basically every single game. I know game 5 they lost only 4-3, but I just think the strategy for LA of just wearing down Mike Smith at 40 years old, you do the math, anyone at 40 years old is going to slow down after consecutive games where you're playing every other day. That's just what I see in this series. I like LA to come out of it. I think that's going to be an upset. I think the Kings will beat the Oilers in this series. But again, similar to the NBA, the action in the NHL playoffs has been incredible, and I'm looking forward to what happens next on the race to the Stanley Cup. Now, last week we took a little break from our quick hit segments just because we had 3 big events take place. Obviously, both the NBA, NHL playoffs, and then the NFL draft. But we are back, and we've got a bunch of other headlines to talk about. So let's dive into this week's edition of Quick Hits. And we start in baseball and talk about the LA Angels. How about the Angels being in first place in the American League West with a half game up on the Houston Astros? Obviously, the headline this past week was the rookie left-hander for the Angels, Reed Detmers, throwing a no-hitter against the Tampa Bay Rays on Tuesday night. Which, by the way, why does everyone no-hit the Tampa Bay Rays? For a team that's as good as they are in Tampa, they seem like they get no-hit the most. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But back to Detmers. 108 pitches, only 108, 1 walk and 2 strikeouts. So I think, well, you give the pitcher credit, you got to give the fielders a bunch of credit as well. Because the fact of 1 walk and 2 strikeouts means you didn't really pitch that dominant. Obviously, you have to give credit to the pitcher, but this is more of like a 70-30 kind of thing. I give 30% of credit to the fielders because obviously they wouldn't be able to make those plays without pitches being in the right spot and hitters just not doing anything with them. But the rookie is the youngest with a no-no since Anibal Sanchez for the Marlins in 2006. But again, I tie this all back to how well the Angels have played to start the first month and a half of the season. And the problem I saw was that they just finally have some controlled pitching now. We know that Mike Trout is back. He's healthy, and he's back to Mike Trout ways. as an early MVP candidate, hitting 337, 9 home runs, 19 RBIs. The team average is 5th in the majors with 251, and they are tops in the league in home runs and RBIs. But the pitching is the big story for me. Not only do you have this kid Detmers, but you got Shohei Ohtani, the two-way masterpiece. You got Thor, Noah Syndergaard, Patrick Sandoval. They're all in the rotation. They've been pitching well. You got Raciel Iglesias as your closer, Ryan Tepera, Aaron Loup in the bullpen. There's finally some controlled pitching in that Angels pitching staff. So credit to the Angels. Do I think they can, stay atop the division? Probably not. But I do think they will be chasing after the playoffs. So finally, the Angels are back in contention. Sticking with baseball, though, Christian Yelich making some news with the Milwaukee Brewers and making some history as he hit his 3rd career cycle. There's only now 6 players who have at least 3, career cycles. Christian Yelich is in that category right now, and Trey Turner was the most recent one. And honestly, he's just been kind of overlooked since he won MVP in 2019. Now, granted, his numbers hasn't even been close to when he hit in 2019. That MVP year, he hit 329, 44 homers, 97 RBIs. I think, previous years he's hit like 250 or 260 or something like that. So the numbers haven't been there, and rightly so. He's been overlooked, but he is only 30 years old, so there is still some time to break that record. He could get that 4th career cycle. But on the Brewers, for the Brewers, he's still an important part of that lineup, and I think if he continues to, if he can get, relatively close to that MVP season that he had a few years ago, then the Brewers can be real true contenders for the World Series. So congrats to Christian Yelich for once again hitting for the cycle. Another day, another headline about Tom Brady. This one's a little more important, though, as Brady now has a career path for life after football after signing a 10-year, $375 million deal to be Fox's lead analyst for the NFL when his playing days are over. $375 million? Most players who are playing right now don't even get that number, okay? That's insane. That's insane, the numbers that Fox is giving him. And obviously Fox needs a boost because they lost their top broadcasting team, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, to ESPN. So they needed something, or they needed someone to get viewers, on their eyes and get people appealing. But I didn't really see Tom Brady as a guy who could go to the booth, just because I wouldn't see him transition, because he said over and over he values spending time with his family. Obviously, when he does retire, he's going to get more time, but he will, it's not going to be a 7-day-a-week kind of thing. It surprised me to see Tom Brady sign on to, be an analyst in the broadcast booth. And maybe this is Fox thinking, this is them capitalizing, thinking, Brady was kind of, indecisive about returning to Tampa. Maybe he'll retire after this year. So they're thinking, that maybe this year is the very last year that Tom Brady plays the NFL. And that's hard to say. It's hard to say because we don't know until we hear it from the horse's mouth. But this is the reason I'm going after being a professional play-by-play, because I want to get numbers like Tom Brady is when he gets to the booth. I want to be the one to sign a 10-year, $375 million deal. And hopefully I get there. We've got some big news in the world of golf, not only on the course, but off the course as well, as related to the possible new competition in the Saudi Golf League. The first news that's happening off the course is that the PGA Tour has denied releases for anyone wanting to compete in that first Saudi event. And we know some of the names are Phil Mickelson, Sergio Garcia, and Lee Westwood, who have requested a release. And we even heard from current PGA pro Justin Thomas, who said, if you want to go, then go. Ultimately, it's hard to say, because I'm not a total expert in the Saudi Golf League, in particular, but all I know is they're offering a lot of money to these golfers. So I think the PGA kind of sees the LIV as competition. You know, if they're offering money like that, they might have to. You know, they don't want to match that kind of money because we've seen how historically they've treated their PGA pros. So, you know, maybe this is real competition that the PGA sees, and they're trying to do everything they can to try and keep as many golfers as they can. That's just what I see on the PGA side of things. But on the course, the PGA Championship is set for next week in Oklahoma, and we have two notable competitors who are in the field for next week's tournament. It's Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. Tiger, it'll be his second major since his leg injury, and we already heard from Tiger that he's preparing to play in the majors. He said he's going to do a part-time schedule. He's not going to, play every single week or something like that. You know, I'm looking for Tiger to probably play a lot better because when you saw him play in the Masters, he played well that first day, but then when you got to day 2, 3, and 4, he really struggled. And I think now that he knows, like, how he feels after day 2 or day 3, I think he's going to be a lot better. I think he can make the cut in the tournament, but I wouldn't expect him to win the tournament. But the headline more is about Phil Mickelson because he hasn't played since he made his controversial comments. If you remember, he talked about the Saudi Golf League and talked about the Saudis in general. So I'm just curious, if he does play and he says he's going to play, how are the players and the fans going to treat him? You know, are they going to like give him the cold shoulder? Are they going to throw him some booze on the first tee? I don't know what it's going to be. You know, I just want to see how receptive the PGA Tour in general is to Phil Mickelson if he does return to play. And then finally, in the NFL, the schedule release will come out tonight. By the time this episode is released, the full schedule, week by week, will be released. But there was a few games that were announced, and there was one game I wanted to look at in particular. Maybe not a headliner game, but I really want to talk about the Cowboys going to Green Bay and playing the Packers in Week 10. Why? Because it's Mike McCarthy's first game at Lambeau since he was fired from the Green Bay Packers. And I think similar to last year, the interaction between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, all eyes are going to be Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. How are they going to interact? Are they going to try and patch things up by the time this game gets played? How are the fans going to treat Mike McCarthy? Are they going to give him the booze or are they going to cheer him? Because this is a guy who brought them a Super Bowl back in 2011 along with Aaron Rodgers. So that's the game I'm really noticing. I'll probably do more analyzing when the full schedule comes out, and by the time we get to next week, what the schedule actually will be like, you know, who's got the best matchups, who's got the worst matchups. Obviously, this is a game everyone's going to circle, and it's going to be a primetime game, no doubt about it. You know, whether it's like a 4:30 or, you know, a Sunday night football or a Monday night football, I think all eyes, you know, similar to, you know, I just look at it similar to Bucks Pats. Cowboys Packers are going to be the Bucks Pats from a year ago. And that is a wrap up on this week's edition of Quick Hits. For those of you who are fans from the Boston area, this is your segment to shine. It's time for our Let's Get Local segment of the week. And as I said at the top of the show, it's not been very good. I have not been feeling very good since last night. And everyone knows about last night. The fact that the Celtics blew their chance to lead 3-2. And now they're down 3-2 heading into Milwaukee Friday night for Game 6. And I think everyone's talking about that fourth quarter performance because this was a masterpiece, you know, or at least close to a masterpiece of how to play the Milwaukee Bucks for about 3 quarters. For 3 quarters, they played great. They had a 14-point lead on them at one point. And then just overall, I look at it from coaching to players. I was just not a fan of that fourth quarter performance. I thought they were just too conservative. They were playing with the clock more than playing with them playing against the Bucks. I thought they were trying to slow things down, and they just got slow to a point where it just didn't look like the Celtics that we have known for the past couple of months. This was a team that has to get a lot of ball movement going on. This is a team that has to continue to drive and kick, and when they started to drive and kick, that was with like 10 seconds on the shot clock. And you can't even say they started doing that when there was like 5 minutes left. No, they did that for the whole quarter. They just got away from their style of offense. There was too much isolation, not enough ball movement. Jaylen Brown didn't have enough minutes in the fourth quarter. He came in too late. And then obviously just some bad bounces, obviously. The lack of size bit them in the butt, without Robert Williams. You put Robert Williams and Al Horford down on the blocks with those free throws, then I would have said, they probably get the ball, they hold on to it, and they make some free throws. But the fact of the matter is Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart couldn't corral the rebound. Bobby Portis was right there. He banks it in. And then, what happened after that? I'm not gonna bash Marcus Smart too much, because this is a guy, everyone wants to bash him. Why is he taking that shot? Why is he taking that shot? Well, this is a guy, though, that if you didn't have him on that roster, then I don't even see the Celtics in this series at all. I see them still at 18-21. So I'm not going to bash Marcus Smart too much, saying like, oh, he shouldn't even be a part of it. But it's just his decision-making in that moment is all I want to focus on. I mean, there was so much time left on the clock after the Bucks took that 1-point lead that he drives in, he goes for the block. And I want to give credit to Jrue Holiday for making the defensive play. But the decision-making that Smart had in those last couple of seconds was very, very lacking. When you go back to the rebound, I don't know, like there was just miscommunication with him and Brown on that rebound. It seemed like Brown knocked it out of Smart's hands. And then that last offensive possession, he went for the layup and Holiday blocked it. If it was me, if I was the coach, I get why you're doing that, because you trust your defense to make a stop. But I would have taken more time off the clock and maybe get a better shot out there. Maybe like a drive and kick or something like that. But back to the decision making, though, like with Marcus Smart, when you look at the options that are on the court, I think I would trust the ball more in Tatum's hands or Brown's hands or even Horford's hands, to be completely honest. So, that's where I sort of am with Smart on that play. In the previous, play after the Bucks made their free throws and made it a 3-point game, I don't fault the kind of play like that, because I saw the intention of what was going on. The inbound went to Horford, give back to Smart. Smart was on that left side. I know everyone's saying, oh, Tatum was wide open on that right side. Maybe that's where he was going. And obviously, that was the play design. I'm guessing what Ime Udoka was looking for. He was just saying, Alan Marcus, give and go, and then go from there, or something like that. So again, credit to Holiday for that defensive play. But I just look at decision making, particularly in that game. And, Smart even admitted it. That's a guy who you want. He said, we blew it. We had our chance. And that's kind of what you want to see. And obviously it's going to hurt for Celtics fans, because like I said earlier in the show, this was a game that was in front of them. You could have taken a 3-2 series lead. You were dominating for about 35 minutes of that game. And then you let Milwaukee come back in and win. But you could say it's deja vu from game 4, because Milwaukee did the exact same thing. They were up by like 11 late in the third. And then the Celtics came back in game 4. Horford had a big game. They eventually won by 10. So it's kind of just like a tit for tat kind of thing. But now they're in must-win scenario. And I do trust this Celtics team to rebound, literally and figuratively. I think it comes down to how well Robert Williams is on the floor, because we've seen it when Brook Lopez is on the floor, when Giannis is on the floor, and even Bobby Portis from time to time, which I will add about Portis's go ahead. The refs did miss a travel. I definitely thought he traveled out there. But obviously in late game scenarios, they're not going to call it. Um, just again, it comes down to how well can the Celtics rebound. Because even Ime said, like, offensive rebounds was the main thing. That was ultimately what it was. So that's kind of what I see from the Celtics. I'm not giving up whole hope, but I know that if the Celtics do lose this series, they are going to look back at this game 5, and going to say that was our chance. Because the reason I'm like so passionate about it, because I think this is a championship caliber team. I still hold on to the fact that out of this series between Boston and Milwaukee, one of them is going to the Eastern Conference Finals, because I think this is a team on Boston's side of things, at least. They can shut down Philly and they can shut down Miami, both in a 7-game series. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I think this is one of the Celtics' better chances to get to the finals. And if they bite themselves in the butt versus like Milwaukee just totally taking over a game, if the Celtics played the same kind of offense they did earlier in the game and they gave up this 14-point lead, then it'd be another story. But the fact is they totally like changed their game plan. And, I know these Celtics, they love sort of being the underdog back against the wall. So maybe it's for the better that the Celtics have their backs against the walls and they are in a must-win scenario. Because like this game 5 was must-win, but it wasn't, must-win where if you lose, you're going to be eliminated, like it is there. So you win game 6. This is huge. And then game 7, I feel ultimately confident that the Celtics can do it on their home floor, simply for that reason, because they are on their home floor. So we'll just see how the Celtics respond Friday night. I know all eyes are going to be glued to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to see if the Celtics can stave off elimination. But a team that does need to stave off elimination are the Bruins, and that happens tonight when they play the Carolina Hurricanes. And who knows, by the time this episode is out, they might have already be eliminated. I already said that this is basically, a home team victory, because home teams have played phenomenally well in this series. I don't have the exact numbers, but I just can't explain why these teams have such different performances on the road versus at home. I mean, I can tell you an issue is the special teams when they play on the road. When you look at game 5, they were 0 of 3 on the power play, 2 of 5 on the penalty kill. I know the numbers say they were 3 of 5, but that Seth Jarvis one was like, a second or two after it ended. So you could still kind of count it as being on the penalty kill. And then I just don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I think, part of it is Jeremy Swayman. He's got some playoff inexperience in terms of playing on the road. That's part of it. But hey, Bruce Cassidy has said you can't falter everything on him. And then I just think, I think the Hurricanes just play so much better when they're at home. I think part of it is that. So I do think that the Bruins can win this series. I really see, I see the Bruins winning game 6 on their home ice, just because the energy from the Garden is going to be rocking. And we know that the Bruins play so much better at home just because of the way the series has went. But game 7 is going to be really, really hard for them to win. I think it's going to be really hard if the series continues like this. So that's just a short thing on the Bruins. It's just same old, like I talked about last week. I did say that they were totally out of it and I thought they'd get swept, but that was before a game was even played at TD Garden in Boston. Now things are different. I still kind of hold certain to the fact that Carolina wins, but really just for another side of things, just because, home teams are playing better and Carolina obviously has the home ice, if it gets to a game 7. So that's kind of what I see. Sorry, Bruins fans, but I don't really think this is a team that can get out of this series and can win a game on the road, or at least in Carolina. That's a hard thing for me to see. But let's talk. I was going to talk about the Red Sox really quick, but we did get news earlier in the morning. I just want to talk about that real quick. The Pats trading Jarrett Stidham to the Raiders for a couple of draft picks. I kind of saw this coming after drafting Bailey Zappi. That's your third string quarterback now. Hopefully he will be your backup at one point, because Brian Hoyer ain't going to stay around too much longer. Mac Jones is obviously still the guy. And then hopefully Zappi develops into a good third stringer, maybe a practice squad kind of guy. But again, we'll probably talk about the Patriots next week when the schedule comes out. We'll talk about the big games that they've got there. But let's talk about the Red Sox, who are still playing. And they still can't get any consistency from anybody. They're sitting at 11-20 right now. And obviously last night was a killer. It's like a good news, bad news thing. The good news was that Trevor Story finally got his first home run as a member of the Red Sox. It took a month and a half, and he finally got it. After striking out 8,000 times, he finally got someone to he finally got a pitch to hit and hit it over the fence. That's the good news. The bad news was you didn't score any more than that. You had it 3-3, bottom 9. Ryan Brazier's in, boom, walk-off home run to Orlando Arcia. I do want to give credit to the Braves because they are the defending champs, but gosh, this bullpen can't get anything right. They can't get anything right. And it would be totally different if the offense was playing better. If they had scored more runs, then you wouldn't have to pressure the bullpen so much. But just when it comes down to holding on to runs or saving runs, this team can't do it. This bullpen cannot do it. And I said it week after week after week, is that this bullpen has to be one of the weakest ones in the MLB. And I know everyone's saying, no, but most players play really well. Okay. But when you need your bullpen to play the best it can be, they can't do it. They can't play when you absolutely need them to play. They can't pitch well at the most important moments. Even in a 9-4 game, like they did, but like they had on a Tuesday night against the Braves, you were biting your nails if you were a Red Sox fan, because if the Red Sox didn't get any runs in that 9th inning, then this bullpen could have easily just thrown it away. And, obviously the momentum killer was when the bases were loaded and Kevin Plawecki struck out on an absolutely horrible call. And he got tossed for arguing, and Alex Cora got ejected, which, by the way, the umpires have been garbage in the MLB this year in terms of ejections. I mean, look at the Madison Bumgarner ejection, the game between the Blue Jays and the Yankees the other night, some wrongful ejections there. But I don't know what this Sox team has to do to turn around their offense, because I just see, the bullpen is bad, but we knew that coming in. We didn't know how bad the lineup was going to be. We didn't know they were going to be this bad. And, I was producing Late Night with KJ Carson on WBEI, and we were both agreeing that, your top two hitters are Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers, and they're basically on contract years. Bogaerts has already, possibly said that he's done. Devers is looking for a $300 million extension, and they're the only two players that seem to be playing well. So if you're front office, you got to start paying those guys, because otherwise your offense is going to be total garbage. If Trevor Story can't hit the way he is, if JD Martinez, he doesn't have a few more years, he's going to be gone in the next couple of years. Where's your foundation? Bogaerts and Devers are your foundation. The fact that Chaim Bloom doesn't dedicate his entire salary to these two guys is absolutely ridiculous. This is not Tampa Bay, where he was the general manager. This is Boston. This is a high market team that expects victory. So you can't be all lovey-dovey with your money and try to get all your players from the bargain bin. You got to spend where you can. That's the front office thing I have for the problem in that, maybe the hitting coach has to be fired in the immediate future, in the present term. It's frustrating. It's frustrating in the city of Boston to see the Celtics blow a game, the Bruins to, be on the verge of elimination, the Red Sox playing as bad as they are. Hopefully these teams can turn it around, or we can start seeing some more success from these Boston teams. Lastly, as we always do, we look at our LOL moment of the week. And this is a big time moment in terms of someone getting a big time award, but it's a presentation unlike any other. So this week's LOL moment of the week goes to Nikola Jokic, the now two-time reigning MVP in the NBA. Now, what makes this an LOL was that this is a presentation unlike any other, as I mentioned. We've seen guys get awards in their locker room. We saw, before the big awards ceremonies that it would be announced in the press, then they'd have a press conference. And then before the next game, the commissioner would award it to the player, like they did Derrick Rose before a Chicago game or LeBron before a Miami game. This is something I've never seen before. The video shows on Inside the NBA on TNT, Nikola Jokic pulling up on a horse to his stable with some weird, I guess it's Serbian music. I'm not 100% sure what the music is, but it sounds like, I hear an accordion in the background, which Michelle Hart, one of my friends, will definitely love. He comes, he's riding a horse. He takes off the helmet. He's hugging everybody. And then he gets the award. And then after he gets it, he conducts the interview with the Inside the NBA crew from his stable. He's got a horse in the background, just chilling out, just doing his own thing while Jokic is talking about, oh, this is such a tremendous honor to be MVP second year in a row, blah, blah, blah. I'm just, there is only one joker. There's only one joker, and it's Nikola Jokic. The fact that he comes on a horse in Serbia to accept his MVP award. And obviously it's a big time moment, and it's going to mean, serious stuff to him because, he has a stable, obviously. He raises horses, that kind of thing. And his family was there, giving him hugs and stuff like that. But I just think from across the pond here in America, that's just kind of funny to see that kind of entrance. It's different coming into the locker room or maybe coming out of a car or something like that, or a limo. No, this guy comes on a horse like he's in Chariots of Fire, galloping at 5 miles an hour. And he comes off and receives possibly the biggest award of his career for the second year in a row. So that was funny to me to see Jokic accept it in that kind of way. So Joker, for accepting your MVP in the most unique way, I would say, in sports history, you've landed yourself into this week's LOL moment of the week. So that wraps it up for this edition of Let Me Speak. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure as always you are following our other pages on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All you gotta do is search Let Me Speak Podcast. And remember, as always, if you got a point you gotta get across, just let the whole world know. Shut up and let me speak.